the small kitchen. The man's voice on the phone was cold and precise. "You have 72 hours. Miss Carter. After that, we take the house." Her hands froze around the bottle. Her father's house. The only thing he had left her before his death from a heart attack brought on by the same crushing debt she now carried. She hung up slowly, her pulse hammering her throat. Her mother's faint voice drifted from the bedroom. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Ava forced a smile she couldn't feel. "Yes, Mom, everything's fine. Just a call from work." But nothing was fine. She had 2 part-time jobs, barely enough to cover bills, and her father's medical loans had tripled under interest from the sharks he'd borrowed from trying to save the family home. The next morning, she went straight to Hawthorne Medical Group, where she worked 3 nights a week as an emergency nurse. The building stood like a glass fortress in the middle of the city, shining and cold. She'd never even seen the top floors where the real power lived. Ava waited outside the finance office, gripping her worn folder of payslips and repayment requests. She hoped to convince them to release her last 2 months of delayed salary or maybe approve overtime shifts. When the elevator doors opened, everyone went still. Liam Hawthorne stepped out. He wasn't what she expected for a millionaire. His suit was dark and simple, his expression unreadable, like someone who'd learned long ago that emotion was weakness. People moved out of his way, but his eyes landed briefly on her, curious, sharp, then gone. The finance director's voice trembled when she introduced them. "Mr. Hawthorne, this is Ava Carter, one of our trauma nurses." Liam nodded, polite but distant. "What brings you to the executive floor, Miss Carter?" Her throat tightened. "I was hoping to request an advance on my pay, just a small. All one." He studied her in silence, his gaze unsettling, not predatory, just deeply observant, as if measuring not her request but her resolve. How much, he asked, softly enough to make the air feel heavy. 200,000. The number sounded absurd even to her. But she forced herself to meet his eyes. Most people would have laughed or dismissed her. He didn't. He simply leaned back and said quietly, "That's not small." His tone wasn't mocking, just matter of fact. She felt heat rush to her face. "I know it's insane, but I wouldn't ask if it wasn't for my mother. She's sick and my father's debt. I'll repay everything with interest, even if it takes years." For a moment, something flickered behind his calm exterior. Pity, maybe recognition. Then it was gone. "Very few things in life are impossible, Miss Carter," he said finally. "Let me think about your situation." She nodded, unsure what that meant, but his voice carried weight when he added, "Wait for my call." That night, rain lashed against her apartment windows as she sat beside her mother's bed, pretending to read the hospital pamphlets. Her phone buzzed an unknown number. It was him. "Meet me at the Hawthorne Tower penthouse level," he said before she could respond. "I have a proposal." Her heart pounded as she arrived the elevator opening to a room of glass and silence. He stood near the window. City lights reflecting in his eyes, the storm behind him made everything look surreal. "You asked me for money," he said evenly. "I can give it to you, every cent of it, but I want something in return." Ava's fingers tightened on her bag. "What do you mean?" He turned fully toward her, his expression calm yet strangely vulnerable. "Give me a child and I'll erase your debt." For a moment the world stopped. She stared at him, unable to speak, disbelief rising like heat through her body. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious, Miss Carter." His tone didn't waver. "No one has ever told me no, but you are welcome to walk away if pride is worth more than your mother's home." Humiliation burned through her chest, mixed with rage and fear and something else, something that scared her more than his offer. The tiny voice whispering that she didn't have a choice. Why, she asked. Finally, her voice breaking. "Why would someone like you want this?" His gaze softened for the briefest second before he turned away. "I have my reasons." And just like that, she realized she had stepped into a world where desperation met power, where choices weren't about right or wrong, only about survival. She whispered through trembling lips, "When do you need my answer?" His reply was quiet, but final. "You already gave it when you came here tonight morning." Light spilled through the blinds, but Ava felt no warmth. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the contract spread before her. The papers seemed to pulse with power, each line binding her to a future she couldn't yet understand. Liam Hawthorne's signature was already there. Neat, efficient, final. Hers was still missing. The only thing left was her decision. Her mother's weak cough came from the next room, a reminder of why she had come this far. The hospital bills, the mortgage, the debt collectors circling like vultures. She could not save her mother and lose her home. At the same time, she picked up the pen, her hand trembling. Before she could sign, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. "Mr. Hawthorne asked me to deliver these," he said, handing her a sleek folder. Inside were medical arrangements, a private apartment, and a confidentiality agreement. "He will meet you this evening to finalize everything." Ava nodded wordlessly as the man left. She closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. What had she become to even consider this? But survival didn't care about dignity. Survival just demanded payment. That evening she arrived at the penthouse again, the elevator opening to silence. Liam stood by the webnovels. Endow his back to her, the city lights painted his silhouette in cold silver. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Sit, please," he said. She obeyed. Feeling small in the vast glass room, he slid a folder across the table. "It contains all legal protections for you and the child you will have access to, private health care and complete independence. Once the pregnancy is confirmed, the debt will be erased in full." "You talk like this is a business deal," she said, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. "It is for now." His gaze was steady. No emotion, just control. And afterward she asked, "What happens?" Then he hesitated. The first crack in his perfect composure. "Afterward, your life is your own. I require no further involvement unless you choose otherwise." "So I am a transaction," she whispered, her voice shaking. He looked away. "Maybe, but you are not replaceable. Ava, you don't know it yet. But you're the only one who could change everything." The words made no sense, but something in his tone held more truth than logic. He stood, walked to the window again, and said quietly, "My lawyers will handle the logistics. You only need to decide if you can live with this." She signed that night. Her hand steady, though her heart fractured. The pen left a black mark on paper, sealing her fate. Liam watched her with eyes that betrayed nothing, but his jaw tightened as if the moment cost him more than he wanted to admit. The next morning, a car waited for her. A driver in black uniform escorted her to a new residence. It wasn't luxurious, but safe. Clinical white walls and quiet corridors. The attending nurse greeted her politely. "Welcome, Miss Carter. Mr. Hawthorne has instructed full discretion." Days turned into a strange routine. Physical tests, counseling meetings, and silence. She saw Liam only once when he came to review the medical reports. His presence filled the room, calm but heavy, like a storm waiting to break. He asked if she was comfortable. She nodded. He studied her face too long for politeness and said softly, "You're stronger than most people I know." She wanted to ask why he chose her, but something in his expression stopped her, as if he carried a secret too heavy for words. Later that night, she couldn't sleep, her mind spinning with what he'd said stronger than most. What did he mean? She found herself walking through the quiet halls of the building, moonlight spilling across the marble floor through a glass door. She saw him on the terrace, alone, without his suit jacket, his tie loosened, his face unguarded for the first time. He didn't see her watching. His expression was not the face of a man in control. It was the face of someone broken, someone haunted by ghosts she couldn't see. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small photo and stared at it for a long time, his shoulders tense, his breathing uneven, when he turned and caught her reflection in the glass. Neither spoke for a moment. Their eyes met across the silence, something raw and unspoken passing between them. "What are you doing awake?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "I could ask you the same." He looked down at the photo and said, "Because sleep isn't mercy for everyone." She didn't understand, but she felt the ache in his words that night. For the first time, she realized Liam Hawthorne might be the one person more trapped than she was, and she didn't know whether that made him dangerous or just human. The following week felt unreal for Ava. Her days were filled with medical appointments. Silence and the weight of what she had agreed to each night. She told herself this was temporary. A decision born out of desperation, not emotion, but deep down she knew her heart had already crossed a line she could not name. Liam had not visited since that night on the terrace, but his presence lingered in every corner of the building. The staff moved with quiet reverence. When his name was mentioned, his authority lived in the air like electricity. One evening she found herself summoned to his penthouse. Use without explanation. Her heart raced as the elevator doors slid open. He was waiting by the fireplace, dressed in a dark shirt, no tie, his eyes more restless than usual. The usual calm in him seemed fractured. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, unsure what had changed between them. "You look nervous," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I am," she admitted. This isn't exactly a normal arrangement. He nodded as if agreeing with something invisible, then walked closer until the distance between them felt too thin. His gaze held hers with unsettling intensity. You should understand something, Ava, he said quietly. This will not be mechanical. I can't pretend that I don't feel the weight of what we're about to do. She froze. What are you saying? His eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. Tonight. We fulfill the contract, but I won't treat it like a transaction. Not with you. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to run, to protect what little of herself she had left, but something in his expression stopped her. It wasn't lust. It was something far more dangerous. Honesty. He stepped closer, and the air between them changed heavy and fragile at once. Later the room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. The contract had called for distance, yet what happened was nothing like the emotionless exchange they had agreed on. It was slow, human real. Every touch felt like a confession of two souls who had forgotten how to feel until now. When it was over, Ava lay awake in the dim light, staring at the ceiling. She hated that her heart felt something for the man who had bought her future. She hated that his touch had felt like comfort, not control beside her. Liam sat on the edge of the bed, his head lowered, his voice almost a whisper. I thought this would make me feel powerful, he said. Instead, I just feel alive again for the first time in years. She didn't know how to answer, so she said nothing. He looked at her then with a mixture of gratitude and regret and left without another word. The next morning she woke alone, his side of the bed untouched, as if he had erased his presence, the sheets still warm but empty. A message waited on her phone from his assistant. Please report for your routine tests at 9 a.m. No mention of him, no acknowledgement of what had happened. As the days passed, she tried to convince herself that it meant nothing. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face in that moment between control and surrender. The memory burned through her defenses like fire. Weeks later, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror holding a pregnancy test, her hands shaking. The faint pink line appeared clear, undeniable. She sank to the floor, her heart pounding louder than thought. The air around her seemed to vanish. She was carrying his child. The phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered, expecting a clinic call, but the voice that came through made her blood run cold. We know what you did, miss, Carter said, a man on the other end. Calm but threatening. Tell Mr. Hawthorne to stay out of our negotiations, or we'll make sure the whole city finds out what he bought. The call ended before she could reply. Her reflection stared back at her. Pale, trembling, and terrified, she clutched her stomach protectively. For the first time, fear wasn't just about money or debt, it was about survival for her and the tiny life growing inside her. That night, Liam returned to the penthouse, but this time his expression was different. Darker when she told him about the call. His jaw clenched, his eyes turned cold. No one touches you, he said with quiet fury. From this moment on, you are under my protection, always. She wanted to believe him. But deep inside she felt something shifting. This was no longer just about contracts or deals. Something deeper had begun to form. Something neither of them could control, and somewhere in the shadows, someone else had started watching them. Days passed, and the tens. Ion around Ava thickened like fog. She could feel unseen eyes watching her every move. The threats had stopped, but the silence felt even more dangerous. Liam had increased security. Though he never said from whom or why, his once calm demeanor had shifted into something colder. Sharper. His company's name had begun to appear in news headlines, whispering of secret acquisitions and corporate warfare. Ava tried to stay away from the chaos, but it followed her everywhere she went. She was now 3 weeks pregnant, and though the nausea was constant, she worked quietly with the clinic staff who had no idea about her arrangement with Liam. Every appointment, every test was shadowed by fear and curiosity. Who would threaten them, and why? That evening, Liam appeared at the medical facility unannounced. His presence turned every head in the hallway. He said nothing until they were alone. Then he handed her a folder. I want you to read this, he said, his voice low. Inside were surveillance photos, her building, her clinic, her car. Even the park where she sometimes sat after work. The angles were distant, professional but chilling. Someone had been following her long before the call. Her breath hitched. Who did this? She whispered. Liam's eyes were dark. Vincent Hale, my rival. He has been trying to pressure me into selling a section of my company. He must have found out about you, and he thinks you're leverage. She stared at the photos, her pulse racing. What do you mean, leverage? He looked at her steadily to get to me. That night he insisted she move into his private estate far from the city. She refused at first. But the threat of another call, the thought of harm to the life inside her broke her resistance when she arrived. The place felt less like a mansion and more like a fortress. Security guards patrolled the grounds. Cameras blinked softly from every corner. Liam's mother, Marianne, was there too, her frail body wrappy. Ed in a blanket on the terrace, her voice soft but piercing. "You must be the girl my son won't stop talking about." Ava's eyes widened. Liam rarely spoke of emotions, but the old woman's words were filled with certainty. "He told you about me?" Ava asked quietly. Marianne smiled faintly. "He didn't need to. I saw it the moment he started living again." That evening over dinner, the storm outside began to rage, thunder rolling like warning drums. Marianne excused herself. Leaving them alone, the candlelight flickered across Liam's face, revealing exhaustion beneath his polished exterior. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man haunted by something he couldn't outrun. Ava broke the silence. "I don't understand. You could have chosen anyone. Why me?" His hand tightened around his glass. "Because you didn't want anything from me," he said. Finally, "Every person around me wants power or money. You just wanted to save what was left of your life. I thought I was helping you, but I think I was trying to save myself." The storm outside grew louder, wind shaking the windows, as if the world itself wanted to listen. Suddenly, one of the guards burst into the room. "Mr. Hawthorne, we found a tracking device on the main gate." Liam stood instantly, every muscle in his body tensed. "Get her upstairs now." The power flickered out, plunging the house into shadows. Ava clutched his arm as footsteps echoed down the hall. Not from guards, but from the wrong direction toward them. Liam pushed her behind him, his voice calm but deadly. "Stay here, no matter what happens." She wanted to scream to stop him, but before she could move, the door to the terrace flew open. Rain swept in, soaking the marble floor. A figure in black stepped through. Lightning flashing behind him. Liam lunged without hesitation. The two men collided, crashing into the glass railing, fists and rain mixing in chaos. Ava pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering for the baby to stay safe. The guards arrived seconds later, dragging the intruder to the ground. Liam's face was cut, his knuckles bleeding but high. A's eyes were burning with fury. When they pulled off the man's mask, she gasped. It wasn't a stranger. It was one of Liam's own security staff. His voice rasped through broken teeth. He said, "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Liam's expression darkened. "Who paid you?" The man coughed before answering. "Hale. He said he wanted her scared enough to run back to the city. He wanted you vulnerable." Liam stood silent, rain dripping down his jaw. His gaze turned to Ava the moment he looked at her. She knew something had changed inside him. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. This was personal. His eyes softened only when they met hers. "I promise you," he said, "no one will ever use you against me again." And in that vow she saw something she hadn't before. Not power, not control, but fear. Fear of losing her. Not because of a contract, but because somewhere between obligation and protection, Liam Hawthorne had started to fall in love with her the night after the attack. Left the mansion in uneasy silence. Guards doubled their patrols. Every corner buzzed with hidden tension. Ava couldn't sleep. She sat by the window staring into the fog while the faint heartbeat monitor from her pregnancy device pulsed steadily beside her. She was safe for now, but her world no longer belonged to her. In the hallway she heard footsteps, heavy and slow. Liam was pacing again. She stepped out quietly. He stood at the edge of the corridor, shirt sleeves rolled up, hands pressed against the glass. His reflection looked haunted. "You should be resting," he said without turning. She answered softly. "You should be sleeping too." He finally faced her, his eyes dark beneath the dim light. "I can't not. When I know you were almost hurt because of me." She walked closer until she could see the bruise near his jaw. It was small, but real proof that the man who had once seemed untouchable was made of blood and fear, just like her. He noticed her staring and gave a faint smile. "It's not as bad as it looks. I've had worse." She shook her head. "You shouldn't have had to fight for me." His expression changed, serious. "Again, I didn't fight for you. I fought because the thought of losing you made me realize how much I already have." She didn't know how to respond to that. Her throat felt tight, so she looked away, but the silence between them was heavier than words. The next morning, news broke across every major outlet. Hawthorne Medical Group under investigation for illegal acquisition deals connected to Vincent Hale. The timing was perfect, too. Perfect. Liam read the report at breakfast, his jaw set. "This is Haley's final move," he said. He's using the attack to destroy me from the inside. Ava watched him closely. He wasn't angry in the way she expected. He was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. She wanted to help, but what could she do? She was just the woman carrying his child, yet deep inside she knew she wasn't just that anymore. She was part of the storm. That afternoon she ventured into the gardens for air. The roses were heavy with dew, the world deceptively peaceful until she noticed a figure near the gates. Not a guard, but a stranger holding a camera. Her pulse spiked. She called for help, but the man ran, disappearing into the woods. When the guards reached her, she was shaking. They searched the area but found nothing. Liam appeared moments later, breathless when he saw her. His hands went straight to her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, just frightened. His grip softened. He drew her close without thinking, and she felt the steady beat of his heart against hers. "You're not alone anymore, Ava." That night she woke to the sound of muffled voices downstairs. She crept down the stairs and saw Liam on the phone, his voice low and strained. "I don't care about the company right now. I care about her. If Hale wants me, he can have everything. But he touches her once, and I'll burn his empire to the ground." He didn't know she was listening. The words sank deep into her chest, leaving her breathless. She went back upstairs before he could see, her heart twisting with emotions she couldn't name. By morning, the air around the estate had shifted again. Investigators arrived, asking questions, taking files. The media hovered like vultures at the gates. Marianne grew weaker, her voice faint when she called Ava to her side. "My son was born in power, but empty," she whispered softly. "Don't let him lose what he finally found." Ava promised she wouldn't, even though she didn't know what that meant anymore. That evening, the tension broke. A single call came through from Hale himself, his tone mocking. "I told you, Hawthorne. Everyone has a weakness. Yours just happens to have a heartbeat." Liam's knuckles turned white around the phone. "If you touch her?" Hale laughed. "Or what? You'll destroy me with your moral speeches. You already destroyed yourself when you let her in." The line went dead. Liam's eyes lifted slowly, and in that instant something dangerous flashed inside him. Not rage, but purpose. He called his assistant. "Prepare a press statement." "I'm ending this tonight." Ava watched from the balcony as he stepped into the storm. That night, his car lights disappearing through the rain. She didn't know where he was going, only that something irreversible was about to begin. Hours passed before the phone rang. It was one of his security men. "Mr. Hawthorne has gone to meet Hale in person. We lost contact 15 minutes ago." Her breath caught. She dropped the phone, her hands trembling. She felt the baby kick sharply as if echoing her fear. Outside, thunder rolled through the night. The house lights flickered, then went dark. She whispered into the shadows. Please let him be safe, not knowing if the darkness outside was the storm or the beginning of something far worse. Rain poured endlessly through the night, while Ava paced near the window, her mind spinning with fear. Liam had gone to face Vincent Hale alone, and every minute without. News felt like a lifetime. Lightning lit the sky in violent flashes, showing only her reflection. Pale and trembling, she pressed her hand, too, her belly whispering to the child inside. "Hold on. We need him to come back." The door burst open. 2 guards entered, soaked from the storm, their faces tight with worry. "We lost signal with his car," one of them said. "The GPS went dark 20 minutes ago." Ava's heart stopped. "What do you mean, lost signal? Where is he?" They exchanged glances before answering. The last location pinged near the abandoned harbor district. Her pulse quickened. "That's the industrial area. No security coverage, no witnesses." The realization hit her. He was walking straight into a trap. She grabbed her coat, ignoring their protests. "You can't leave, Miss Carter," they said. "Mr. Hawthorne ordered us to keep you safe." She turned on them, her voice trembling with anger. Safe means nothing if he dies out there, before they could stop her. She was already out in the rain, driving the spare car she had hidden for emergencies. The streets blurred beneath the storm, the wipers struggling to keep up. Every turn felt longer, darker, until the glow of distant lights appeared through the fog. She followed it until she saw them. 2 black cars parked near the edge of the docks. She stopped the car and stepped into the rain, her heart thundering. She could barely see through the sheets of water, but the sound of raised voices carried through the wind, Liam's voice, cold and sharp. "You think threatening her will give you power? Hale, you're already finished." Hale's laughter echoed. "You built an empire on control, and now you can't even control one woman. That's your weakness." Another flash of lightning revealed Liam standing near the edge of the pier, soaked but unbroken. Hale stepped closer, holding a gun, casual and cruel. Ava froze, fear clawing up her throat before she could call out. Liam's voice cut through the wind. "She's not a weakness. She's the only thing that ever made me human." The shot came a second later, sharp and deafening. Liam staggered backward. "Hal." He smirked, but before he could fire again, Liam lunged. The two men crashed against the railing, the gun clattering across the pier. Ava screamed his name, running toward them just as the railing snapped. The men fell into the water below. The world went silent, except for the roar of rain. She ran to the edge, shouting his name over and over. Guards arrived, pulling her back. The current was too strong. "We'll find him, Miss Carter," one shouted, but his words felt hollow. The waves swallowed everything. Hours passed. Searchlights swept the dark waters until dawn broke, pale and cold. They found one body washed ashore, Hale, his lifeless face twisted in shock. But Liam was gone, vanished into the sea. 3 days later, Ava sat in the hospital. Her clothes still smelled of salt and rain. The doctors warned her the stress could harm the baby, but nothing could reach her. She stared at the window as if he might walk through it. Somehow, alive, every sound made her flinch. Every silence hurt more. On the 4th day, Marianne Hawthorne called, her voice frail but steady. "He's not gone, my dear men. Like my son, don't die so easily." Her faith sounded impossible, yet comforting. Still, Ava couldn't believe. She clutched the small pendant he had once given her for protection and whispered, "Please come back." 2 weeks later, investigators called. They had found something near the harbor wreckage, a watch engraved with his initials, but no body confirmation. They declared him missing, presumed dead. Grief hollowed her. She moved back to her old apartment, quietly refusing interviews or compensation. She named the unborn baby Hope, because that was the only thing left. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. Her belly grew round her nights, sleepless. Then one afternoon, as she closed the door behind a visiting nurse, she heard a faint knock. She froze, the pattern of the knock, 3 slow taps. One quick was familiar. She opened the door and, gasped Liam, stood there, thinner, paler, with a scar near his temple, but alive. His voice was hoarse. "I told you I'd come back." She covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. How she whispered, "I thought you drowned." He smiled faintly. "Not yet. I washed ashore miles away. Woke up in a fisherman's hut. They said I was lucky. I don't think it was luck. I think it was you." He reached for her hand, pressing it gently against his heart. "It's still beating because you believed in me." She trembled, between shock and relief. He looked down at her swollen belly, awe softening his face. "I missed everything, didn't I?" She laughed through tears. "Not everything. You're right on time, but behind the joy lay another truth. He had returned from death, but so had his enemies. Hale's network wasn't dead. Only the man and the storm that had started everything was far from over. The weeks after Liam's return felt like living between dreams and ghosts. Ava couldn't stop touching him, just to prove he was real. Sometimes he would flinch, as if the world around him still didn't make sense. His nightmares came every night, the sound of gunfire and water waking him with a jolt. She would calm him, whispering that he was safe now, but deep inside she knew nothing about their life was safe anymore. His company had fallen under investigation. The press fed on rumors. The board demanded answers, and Hale's remaining partners were still out there. Liam was alive, but his empire was bleeding, and the only thing keeping him steady was the woman carrying his child. One night, as thunder rolled again outside the window, Liam stood by the crib they had begun to build together, his voice low the moment I came back. "Someone inside my company moved money offshore, someone close to me." He turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "The only people with access were my chief financial officer and my assistant Valerie. She's been with me for years. I can't believe she would betray me." Ava frowned. Maybe she didn't. Maybe someone used her login, but Liam's gaze was distant, suspect. "Yes, I'm not sure anymore." He left the next morning without telling her where he was going. She waited all day until darkness fell. The rain starting again, as if the sky itself refused peace near midnight. Headlights appeared outside the apartment. She rushed to the window, but it wasn't Liam. 2 men in black suits stepped out and knocked on the door. "Miss Carter," one said coldly, "we're here on behalf of the Hawthorne board. Please come with us. We need to verify some financial statements in your name." "My name?" she repeated, confused. "I don't have anything to do with Hawthorne's accounts." "That's not what our records say," he replied, opening a folder showing transactions under her identity. Accounts she had never seen. The amounts were staggering. The date stamps recent. A chill spread through her chest. This is wrong. I didn't sign anything. They exchanged glances. One of them stepped closer, almost apologetic. Then you might want to find whoever did before the authorities do. The door shut behind them, leaving her breathless. She called Liam. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. The next morning, his number was disconnected. She felt the world tilt beneath her feet. By evening, the news broke. Liam Hawthorne missing again, suspected of corporate fraud. The story exploded everywhere. The image of his face flashed across screens. The headline said, "Billionaire vanishes under criminal investigation." Ava's hands shook as she watched. She knew it wasn't true, but how could she prove it? Later that night, she received a message from an unknown number. Don't trust anyone. The sender was listed as Valerie. She drove to the only place she could think of, the old harbor where everything had once fallen apart. There she found Valerie waiting beneath a flickering streetlight, her face pale, her eyes hollow. I had to fake those records, Valerie said before Ava could speak. He told me to. Liam told me to. Ava's heart stuttered. Why he knew the board was compromised, Valerie whispered. One of them was working for Hale's old partners, the only way to protect you, and the baby was to make it look like he was running, he said. They can't use you as leverage if they think he's guilty. A car engine roared in the distance. Valerie's head snapped up. They found us. She pressed a small flash drive into Ava's hand. Run. This proves everything. Go north. Don't stop. Before Ava could ask another question, a black van turned the corner, headlights blinding. Valerie shoved her away, shouting, Go! Before a gunshot echoed through the air. Ava ran, her breath tearing through her lungs as tires screeched behind her. She clutched the flash drive like it was life itself. She didn't know where Liam was, if he was alive or trapped somewhere in the web of his own design. All she knew was that the story wasn't over. She reached the edge of the highway, collapsed beside her car, and forced herself to breathe. The flash drive glowed faintly in the rain, its label marked only with one word. Grace. She whispered the name she had already chosen for their child, and realized Liam had left her more than evidence. He had left her a message. He wasn't running from her. He was running for her. And somewhere out there he was still fighting to come back. Night swallowed the highway as Ava drove north, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every mile carried her farther from everything she knew, but closer to the truth she didn't understand yet. Rain blurred the windshield, the world, a smear of fear and motion in the passenger seat. The flash drive sat like a heartbeat, glowing faintly in the dark. Her phone had no signal. She was alone until she saw a pair of headlights appear in the rearview mirror. Too steady, too close. She pressed the accelerator. The car behind her matched her speed. The road twisted through dense woods ahead. There was a sign for a service station. She turned sharply, tires screaming, but the car followed without hesitation. Her pulse pounded as she swerved onto a dirt road. The forest. Swallowing the path, she turned off the lights and coasted into darkness, holding her breath. The other car slowed behind her, stopped, then reversed, disappearing back toward the highway. She stayed still for what felt like hours, before finally exhaling. The baby kicked softly as if reminding her to keep going. By dawn, she reached a small town at the edge of nowhere. She checked into a motel under a false name, her hands shaking as she inserted the flash drive into the old laptop. The screen flickered to life. Files opened in sequence, coded messages, hidden documents. The truth began to form. Liam hadn't faked his disappearance to escape. He had done it to protect the evidence he'd been gathering for months. Proof that Hale's partners were laundering money through Hawthorne's medical subsidiaries in exchange for experimental drug patents. The deeper she read, the colder she felt. His final encrypted message was a recording. Ava, if you're hearing this, I've failed to reach you in time. He sounded exhausted but calm. The board isn't what it seems. Hale's influence runs deeper. Some of them are planning to use the foundation money to fund black market trials. I can't expose them without risking you, so I made it look like I vanished. I'll contact you when it's safe, if something happens. Give this drive to Dr. Elena Frost. She's the only one who can decrypt the full data trust. No one, not even Valerie. If she's still alive, the recording ended, leaving Ava trembling. Valerie had died protecting this drive had Liam known she wouldn't survive, or had he simply run out of time. She looked up the name Elena Frost and found one address listed an old research facility on the outskirts of Chicago. 3 days later, she arrived at the facility. It looked abandoned, overgrown, and silent. But when she stepped inside, the door clicked shut behind her, lights flickered on. A woman's voice called from the shadows. "You shouldn't. Do you have come alone?" Ava turned to see a tall woman with silver streaks in her dark hair. "Elena Frost, I presume?" she asked. The woman nodded, eyes sharp with intelligence and caution. Liam said, "You'd come eventually." She took the drive from Ava's hand, inserted it into a secured console, and watched streams of data fill the monitors as the files decrypted. Elena's face changed from curiosity to horror. "This is worse than I thought," she whispered. "They're experimenting on unregistered patients using stolen DNA sequences. Your pregnancy is part of their database." Ava's stomach turned. "What do you mean Liam's deal with you? It was never random. They chose you because your genetic profile was part of a fertility trial from years ago. Hale's network wanted access to the data through your child. The baby was never just collateral. It was the key." The words hit like a physical blow. Ava stumbled back, shaking her head. No, he wouldn't have known. Elena met her eyes. He didn't, not at first. But when he found out, he tried to dismantle their entire operation. That's why they came after him. Before Ava could process it, a loud crack shattered the quiet. The front windows exploded inward, bullets tearing through glass. Elena slammed the emergency alarm. "Get down now!" Armed men flooded through the entrance, shouting orders. She grabbed Ava's arm, leading her through a back corridor to a reinforced door. "They'll kill us if they find that drive," Elena hissed. "I'll hold them off. Go through the tunnel." Ava hesitated. "No, I can't leave you." Elena shoved the drive into her pocket. "You have to, for your child. Tell Liam." Frost sent her, regards. The door sealed with a metallic snap behind her. She crawled through the narrow tunnel, emerging into the cold night air. Smoke rising behind her, she didn't look back as the building erupted in flames, lighting the forest, red and gold. She ran until her lungs burned, every echo of the explosion ringing like a heartbeat of war. Somewhere out there, Liam was alive, and the world he had tried to protect her from was now hunting them both. She looked up at the burning sky, whispering, "I'm not running anymore. If they want to fight, they'll have to face a mother who has nothing left to lose." The fire still burned in the distance when Ava reached the edge of the forest. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with soot. She clutched the flash drive like a lifeline, her mind racing with the truth she had just learned. The baby inside her wasn't just a child of desperation, but the center of a conspiracy. Bigger than anything she could have imagined, Liam hadn't just been protecting her. He had been fighting an empire built on human lives. She reached a deserted gas station before sunrise. The attendant looked half asleep when she walked in, but his eyes widened when he saw her face. "Aren't you that woman from the news, the one connected to Hawthorne Medical?" Her heart skipped. She forced a shaky smile. "No, you must be mistaken." He frowned but didn't press. She grabbed a map and left quickly. The storm clouds gathering again over the horizon. As she walked back to the car, a man stepped from behind the pumps. Tall, wearing a gray coat, the kind security men wore in corporate offices. "Miss Carter," he said calmly, his tone too polite to be safe. "Come with me." She backed away. "I don't know you." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, but your husband does." Before she could react, he moved fast, gripping her arm. She twisted free, slamming the car door against him, and hit the gas. The tires screeched on wet asphalt as he shouted something she couldn't hear over the roar of rain. She drove blindly for miles until the road split one direction toward Chicago, the other toward the coast. She hesitated, remembering Elena's last words. Liam had trusted Elena. She had trusted Ava with the drive that meant he might try to find her through that connection. If he was alive. She turned toward the coast. Hours later, she reached a rundown motel near the water exhaustion crash. Awing over her as she checked in, under another false name. She closed the blinds and opened the flash drive again, more encrypted. Data glowed across the screen. One file titled Project Genesis. It contained lab reports, patient lists, photographs of children, rows of them, their faces blurred, but one photo made her freeze. A document signed by Liam Hawthorne 5 years earlier. It was a research grant for fertility treatments connected to Hale's subsidiary. It was possible he had unknowingly funded the same trials that now targeted her. She covered her mouth, shaking. Could this be why he had looked so broken when he found out? The phone in the motel room rang suddenly, its sound slicing through the silence. She hesitated, then answered. Ava, his voice. It was him. She nearly dropped the phone. "Liam, where are you?" I've been trying to reach you for weeks." He sounded tired but alive. "Listen to me. You can't stay in one place for long. They're tracking the flash drive." She froze. But Elena said, "He cut her off. Elena's dead. I saw the explosion. I barely got out before they arrived." "Where are you now?" "Near the coast," she whispered. He exhaled. "Relief. Stay there. I'll come for you." But his voice dropped lower. "Someone's listening. I need you to trust no one." Before she could say another word, the line went dead. She stood frozen, then grabbed her bag and the flash drive, heading for the door. But when she opened it, 2 black cars were waiting outside. Engines idling, men in suits stepping out. She bolted through the back exit, rain pelting her face as she ran toward the cliffs behind the motel. The waves roared below, lightning flashing across the sea. One of the men shouted, "There she is! Don't let her reach the edge!" Her lungs burned, her legs heavy. She turned and saw them closing in. Then a gunshot ripped through the air, splintering the tree beside her. She screamed, dropping to the ground, hands covering her stomach. She crawled behind a rock, clutching the flash drive as footsteps neared. And then she heard a voice she knew. Liam's voice. "Stop now." He looked up. He was there, soaked and bleeding, but standing between her and the men. His presence cut through the chaos, the gun in his hand steady. "You'll have to go through me," he said coldly. The men hesitated, glancing at each other. One of them lowered his weapon, the other didn't. Liam fired once, the man fell, the rest fled into the darkness. Silence followed except for the crash of waves. He turned to her, his face pale but alive. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears mixing with rain. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he said, his hand pressing to his side. "Come on, we can't stay here." He helped her up, leading her to a small car parked nearby. As they drove through the storm, she kept staring at him, afraid he would disappear again. He noticed her watching. "I told you I'd come back," he said quietly. "But this time, we end it together." She didn't answer. She just reached for his hand, holding it tight, as lightning flashed around them. And somewhere between the thunder and the road ahead, she knew that whatever came next, the battle was no longer his, alone. It was theirs, and neither of them planned to run anymore. The rain followed them for hours as they drove through the night. Every road seemed to twist endlessly through fog and fear. Liam's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his shirt still damp with blood. Ava sat beside him, gripping the flash drive against her chest. Neither spoke for a long time, both knowing the silence carried everything they hadn't said. By dawn, they reached an old coastal safe house hidden in the cliffs. Liam led her inside, every window sealed with steel shutters, power from a generator. Humming in the background, she collapsed onto a couch, exhaustion washing over her while he checked the perimeter. When he finally sat beside her, she touched the stain on his side. "You're still bleeding." He caught her hand gently. "I'm fine." She frowned. "You always say that." He smiled faintly. "It's ease. You're then admitting I'm scared." The word scared felt strange coming from him, but it was real. His eyes had softened since she last saw him. This wasn't the same man who once hid emotions behind money and control. This was someone stripped of armor, someone human. She whispered, "I saw what they did in those labs, what they wanted from me and from our baby." His jaw clenched. "I know that's why I burned it all down. Hale's partners, the board, the investors, everything linked to Project Genesis." He leaned forward, his voice low. "I'm ending it tonight." Before she could answer, the sound of a helicopter thundered overhead. Liam froze. "They found us," he said, pulling her to her feet. The windows rattled as floodlights swept across the house. "Go to the basement now." She shook her head. "No, I'm not leaving you." He pressed the flash drive into her hand. "You have to get that data to the press if I don't make it out." She cut him off with trembling defiance. "You're not dying again." The front doors burst open, armed men storming inside. Liam moved like lightning, dragging her behind the wall as gunfire erupted, the air filled with smoke and broken glass. She clutched her stomach, praying the baby stayed safe while Liam fought back methodically. Each move precise, but outnumbered the men, advanced. One threw a flash grenade, the explosion deafening. She screamed. Liam fell to his knees. Blood blooming across his shoulder, something in her snapped. She grabbed a metal rod from the broken railing and swung it at the nearest man, striking him down before he could aim again. Liam looked up, eyes wide with both pain and pride. "Ava, get out now," she shouted. "Not without you." The chaos grew louder. Then, through the smoke, a tall figure stepped forward, the gray-coated man from the gas station, Hale's second-in-command, his gun aimed at her. He smiled coldly. "You were never supposed to survive this, Miss Carter." She froze, unable to move. Liam forced himself up, staggering between the If you touch her, you won't live to regret it, the man sneered. You don't even have a company anymore, Hawthorne, or a legacy. Everything you built is mine. Liam's voice hardened. Then take the company, but you'll never own her. The shot rang out. Both men fell. Liam collapsed, clutching his chest. The other dropped dead beside him. Ava crawled to him, blood soaking through his shirt. Stay with me, she begged, pressing her hands against the wound. His breath was shallow, his voice barely a whisper. I told you I'd fight for you until the end, and I meant it. She shook her head, crying, You're not allowed to leave me, not again. Outside, sirens grew louder, distant but coming closer. Maybe from the authorities, maybe from his allies. She couldn't tell. She leaned closer. Liam, listen to me. We did it. You stopped them. His eyes softened, the faintest smile curving his lips. Then he whispered, Our child. Tell them I loved them, before everything went still. She screamed his name, but the storm drowned her voice. The helicopter lights cut through the windows. Soldiers rushed in, pulling her away. She fought them until everything went dark. When she woke, it was morning. Sunlight streaming through a hospital window. Dr. Elena Frost's assistant stood at her bedside, holding a small envelope inside, was the flash drive and a note written in Liam's handwriting. Don't mourn me. Build what I couldn't. 2 years later, the world knew the truth. Hawthorne Medical's corruption exposed the illegal trials, dismantled the foundation, reborn under Ava's name, the Hawthorne Initiative, a global charity for mothers and children in crisis. Every headline called her the woman who destroyed a $1 billion conspiracy. She never corrected them, but in her heart she knew she hadn't done it alone. The cafe near the coast had become her refuge, a small place filled with warmth and laughter. Her daughter Grace toddled across the floor with the same gray eyes as her father sometimes when the wind rose from the sea. Ava would stand by the window feeling him near, as if the storm that once tore their lives apart still carried his promise in every gust. That evening, as she closed the cafe, the door chimed softly. A man stepped in wearing a coat, dark from rain, his hair longer, his face thinner but unmistakable. Her heart stopped. Liam, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Sorry I'm late. The world tilted. She ran to him, tears spilling down her face. You died. I buried you. He shook his head. I almost did. They pulled me from the wreckage. The government kept me hidden until the trials were done. She touched his face, afraid he might vanish again. He caught her hand and pressed it to his heart. It's still beating for you, she sobbed against his chest. I built everything because of you, he whispered. You built hope for everyone because of us. Outside, the storm began again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder of everything they had survived together, of love found in the wreckage of ruin. He kissed her forehead, holding her close, whispering, We're home now, and for the first time in years, Ava believed it. The storm could rage all it wanted.